Hello rugby fans and welcome back to Rugby Today, where we are going to touch on the opening match of the 2026 Men's Guinness Six Nations competition between France and Ireland at the Stade de France, which should be an absolute belter to get this year's championship underway. Of course, these two sides have won the last four competitions between them, so two heavy hitters coming into this season. Starting with the hosts, who made plenty of news last week with their squad selection when Fabien Galthie rather dramatically dropped Damien Penaud, Gaël Fickou and Gregory Aldred, two of whom have been recent captains and one is France's best ever try finisher. So big news earlier on in the week, of course, and we could kind of see that Galthie was in a bit of a mood to make some selection decisions that perhaps other coaches might not. So let's see how they play out. Touching on those selections, France have done something really interesting here. They have gone very mobile in their pack, despite their clear superiority in the power game last time these two sides met. So starting in the second row, where this mobility has just super evident, where they've gone with Charles Olivon and Michael Guillard, two players who quite often play in the back row. So they are coming in obviously to target this Irish breakdown and more importantly go after Ireland at the line out. When you bring in Francois Cros and Oscar Jégu into the equation, suddenly France have four really high quality jumpers in an area that, if we're being frank, Ireland have really struggled since the 2023 Rugby World Cup. And again, an area that you feel the French have superiority. Interestingly, they of course have Emmanuel Meafou on the bench for that big impact in the second half, and he's part of a 6-2 bench split, which also includes the really exciting talent that is Lenny Nucci, who is just a phenomenal back rower. Plenty of dynamism, really quick over the ground, so he will be a handful when he also comes on. But again, you would have thought if France wanted to go to type, could they have selected a bit more of a powerful pack, perhaps, and just really gone after Ireland direct? But it looks like they want to fight fire with fire and go after Ireland in the breakdown, which is an area that the Irish have just been phenomenal under Andy Farrell. In particular, Caelan Doris is an absolute monster at the breakdown. So really interesting selection there by Galthie. Across the backline, of course, there's no Damien Penaud, which means Teo Adesogbe comes in from Section Palois, or Po for most people we should go with. And again, another phenomenal talent, recently out of the under-20 setup, and just such a handful every time he's pulled on this blue jersey or every time he plays for Po. So he will link up with Louis Biel-Biarré and Thomas Ramos in what's a very exciting and pacey back three, but perhaps one that could be targeted in the air. Now, Adesogbe is the best of the three in the air. He's a recognised aerial threat, but when you look across the board, if Ireland are looking at an area to get into the game, that is an area you would suspect they feel that they've got a bit of dominance when you look at the likes of Jacob Stockdale, Jamie Osborne and Tommy O'Brien in the back three. There's plenty of height there and plenty of aerial skills, so that's a fascinating area for Ireland to target. Onto the Irish selection, Andy Farrell's hand was pretty publicised that it's been quite forced, that he's had to make plenty of changes. In particular, Ireland do not have their first three choices in the loosehead jersey, with Andrew Porter, Paddy McCarthy and Jack Boyle all injured. The Boyle topic is an interesting one because you have to question, why was Boyle playing against Connacht in URC round 10 where he picked up that injury? But then again, rugby players simply cannot be wrapped up in cotton wool, and you do wonder if at times Ireland's phenomenal player protection sort of program might be a little bit over the top for certain positions, and Boyle needed game time coming back in. So, unfortunately, it's just the way the cookie crumbles at this stage. But it does present a very interesting opportunity for Farrell to test his depth, namely with the Munster pairing of Jeremy Loughman and Michael Milne, who are now the two more senior loose heads, if you could call them that, in the squad. And Loughman gets the start. The 30-year-old hasn't featured for Ireland since the 2024 Six Nations, so quite a bit of time since he last pulled on the green jersey. But of the remaining loose heads, he is the most probably renowned scrummager of the trio in the Irish squad, so he gets the nod, with Milne, who has been phenomenal off the bench for Munster this season as a dynamic ball carrier, coming off for Ireland in this one. So it'll be really interesting to see what he can do when he does come on. On the tight head side, things are a little bit healthier, but still not perfect, with Tadhg Furlong coming up just short in his attempt to be fit for this match. And it's a bit concerning that Furlong once again goes down with the same injury that sort of plagued him quite a bit over the last few seasons. But it does pave the way for Thomas Clarkson to get the start, and Clarkson's been nothing short of brilliant for Leinster and Ireland over the past couple of seasons. So it's really exciting to see a young player be rewarded with a start here. And we have a pretty good backup for the Irish here with Finlay Bealham on the bench, bringing plenty of experience later in this contest, albeit you probably think Farrell might have wanted to start turning over to sort of a Furlong-Clarkson combination here. And even further down the depth chart, you look at Ollie Yeager, who's had some serious injury issues. Tom O'Toole up in Ulster was there or thereabouts for selection. So interesting that Farrell's gone with this sort of combination, but makes plenty of sense when you look at his selections over the past few years. Across the board, the other big selection in the pack would be Cian Prendergast getting the start in the number 6 shirt, and this is a move that personally I'm very excited to see. Prendergast, the Connacht captain, is just so abrasive, and for me, with Ryan Baird out, he feels like the most natural fit here. Of course, Cormac Uzuchukwu could have gone in there, and I'd love to have seen that too because he's so dynamic, but Prendergast is getting rewarded for what was a very strong personal performances in November and a strong run with Connacht, and crucially he's a very, very good line-out operator, which is just key when you look at this Irish pack, because really there isn't that many recognised jumpers, I would say. When you look at Tadhg Byrne being perhaps the other serious jumper, Joe McCarthy did some jumping for the line, so you'd hope that he'll get in there, but again, you really want him running ruck shop at sort of ruck mauls and being a bit more of a carrier than a line out option, so a little bit limited there. Josh van der Fleer doesn't really jump very much, and Caelan Doris is quite rare with the jumping. Again, those players are better carriers than they are line out operators, so really interesting to see Prendergast slot in there and perhaps fill that void a little bit. Speaking of Prendergasts, younger brother Sam gets the nod at 10, despite a really strong run of form for Harry Byrne, his Leinster teammate, who's really arguably pushed him out of the starting role at provincial level. And of course, there's Jack Crowley, who many perhaps feel has been hard done by, but even as a staunch Munster fan like myself, it's really hard to look past the kicking woes of Crowley recently, albeit Prendergast hasn't been all that much better in terms of nailing the really simple kicks. The two of them have had some head-scratching misses this season, I think it's fair to say. But again, the online discourse about these players is really quite frustrating to watch, because in reality all three of those players, and you think about Kieran Frawley and then Jack Murphy up in Ulster, all five of those players have plenty of strengths and plenty of scope to get better. So I'm pretty sure we'll see at least those three getting a crack in the 10 jersey, maybe even Frawley, albeit he'll more likely slot in at 12 or 15 as a utility player at some point. So yes, Sam Prendergast gets the nod, and it's a really big test. I'd love to hear what other Irish fans think of this one. For me, this is perhaps the big acid test if Prendergast is going to kick on and be the option for 2027, because if he has a defensive performance like he did against La Rochelle, and I know a lot of Leinster fans say he had a good performance with a couple of good tackles, let's be very real here, he leaked 2 tries. If you go back and watch the match, there were 2 tries. He was just the key catalyst in allowing in when you look at them in terms of one-on-one tackles. He has to front up here against France, and if he has a bad outing, you wonder if Farrell's patience might run a little bit thin. The attacking upside is obvious for everyone to see. The passing game's phenomenal. The long kicking game is brilliant. And there is something about him that you just think there is X factor there. But equally, personally, I feel that Jack Crowley has X factor in bundles himself, especially with the running game and the defensive game. But you do wonder whether he perhaps kind of goes too individual at times, which we've seen, and you understand why with Munster, with the struggles that are going on there. So really interesting to see how both 10s go when their opportunities come. What is very interesting with Crowley on the bench here, you're looking at a 6-2, which is quite a rare occurrence for Ireland, with Nick Timoney, Jack Conan, James Ryan, Finlay Bealham, Michael Milne and Ronan Keller as the forward options. Now that brings a lot of punch, plenty of experience and quite a lot of dynamism. But the one player who could feel hard done by is Edwin Adogbo. But Farrell was pretty clear that despite all of Adogbo's potential, he doesn't want to put him out to the Wolves just yet. And this would have been the biggest test. Now, if you're asking me personally, would Adogbo relish a contest like this? You'd have to think he would. And he's the most like-for-like replacement with Joe McCarthy. And if the scrum starts struggling, perhaps we'll be talking about this on Monday, where the Irish scrum could have done with another big lock there. But James Ryan, you can't argue with the experience there. But there was obviously scope to go with 2 locks, and that might have been harsh on Timoney or Jack Conan, but it's an interesting selection call, and Andy Farrell's gone for 2 back rowers rather than 2 second rowers. So let's see how that plays out. Across the back line, there is also the return of Jamie Osborne, who's straight back in from injury. Probably the most logical choice at fullback when you look at what was on the cards there. You could possibly have played Crowley or Stockdale there, but Osborne is the more recognised fullback in the squad, albeit I think the general consensus is that his future is in the 12 shirt, but with Hugo Keenan not quite being fit for this one, Osborne gets the nod at 15 and brings that booming left boot of his. He'll link up with Stockdale, and it's great to see Stockdale back in the starting lineup. He has pushed James Lowe out, and you have to think if Stockdale goes well here, it's his jersey going forward. Perhaps we might have seen the last of James Lowe in an Ireland shirt consistently. There's no doubting that Stockdale at URC level is in much better form than Lowe. Let's see if that translates to the international stage. And then elsewhere, you've got Stuart McCluskey being rewarded for his great form, starting in the 12 shirt with Gary Ringrose there. So there's no surprises there with Bundy Aki and Robbie Henshaw not in the squad, but it'll be interesting to see how that transitions over the rest of the competition. The 2 scrum halves are Jamison Gibson-Park starting and Craig Casey on the bench, which again, for me, feels like perhaps part of the Crowley debate was bringing Casey and Crowley on together to up the tempo as a combination that they know each other, and then you've got Gibson-Park and Prendergast as the Leinster combination who work well together. Again, I think it's worth noting that we're likely to see all 3 10s and probably see at least 2 of them starting, so it'll be really interesting. But I do think this is a big moment for Sam Prendergast, because if those defensive issues that we've seen for Leinster and Ireland continue, it's really hard to see how Farrell continues to back him in the big games. So I think every Irish fan who's really behind the team wants to see both of these 10s succeed. So should be really exciting. For Ireland, as we touched on there, this is a really tough matchup. They are 13-point underdogs coming into this one, and that seems about right when you look at the 2 teams. But this is the best time historically to get the French is early in the Six Nations rather than when they've gained momentum. And for Ireland, as we touched on there, that back 3 does not frighten you in terms of the aerial contest. It certainly does when they get ball in hand. So Prendergast, Gibson-Park in particular, will need to be on the money with their kicks, get the ball up nice and high for Stockdale, O'Brien and Osborne to contest in particular. Gary Ringrose is perhaps an underrated kicker too, so it'll be exciting to see how much he does from the boot, but you'd have to feel that is Ireland's best route to victory, combined with plenty of possession. So if they can win those ball back and just frustrate the French, that's their route to victory. On the whole, however, even as a die-hard Irish fan, I have to say, this is France's to lose, and I think they won't lose this one at home. I think the French will get up and running. Antoine Dupont, Matthew Jalibert, that's an electric halfback combination, albeit it has at times looked clunky when they've played together. I think it will tick here. So I'm backing France to take this, but not by as much as many people think. I think a lot of people believe that France will blow Ireland out in this one, and while you could see that happening, I think this Irish team has a bit too much experience and class to be completely blown out like they were last season. So I'm thinking France by anywhere from 8 to 10 points in this one, just under the 13-point spread, but still a comfortable victory to get their competition under the way. Of course, Ireland want to win this one, but if they were to be able to get into distance of a losing bonus point, that could be very important when the competition comes to its final rounds, as we saw last season where Ireland were edged by England because of bonus points. So that is my preview of the upcoming clash. Do let us know your thoughts from both sides. French fans, what is your best route to victory here? Irish fans, is it a good thing perhaps that we have so many injuries just a year and a half out from a Rugby World Cup where the depth can be tested? And is this time for Sam Prendergast to put a line in the sand? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and we really hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to watch all of these players at club level, make sure you check out the FloRugby subscription packages, because we have the United Rugby Championship, Gallagher Premiership, Top 14, Investec Champions Cup, EPCR Challenge Cup, Japan League One. We are your one-stop shop for club rugby. So, hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for checking it out.